Well, it's so good to be with you again today. This is exciting for me because we're actually going to kind of tread some new territory that we've not really talked about before. And as you can see, there's three cameras here, and we're having a conversation with Dr. Rich Cozart and myself about an issue that I think is important, and that is, how do teens feel about electronic devices and the impact that they're having on their lives. And so let me just introduce our three teenagers. We have Cole Peterson here. Thank you, Cole. And Isabel Marino and her sister, Gabrielle Marino. And so we're really excited about this, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cozart now so that he can talk a little bit about the topic and what we will be covering.
Thank you, Pat. Of course, media devices are what we would say ubiquitous. They are everywhere in our society, and they are especially prevalent with young people. And these devices, which are being used by so many, have mental health implications. And so today we want to just talk with our young people here. We want to ask them some questions. We just want to interact together. And then Dr. Ryan and I also want to make some comments in terms of mental health and perhaps some other advice about parenting and what it means in terms of us going forward. This is especially, I think, prevalent with COVID and, the things that are going on in our society today with the pandemic. And so we want to talk about it within the context of all these other difficulties that we're facing as a society. So with that, we want to pose a question to our young people, starting off with this. How do you currently use media devices in your life? What role do these devices play in your life? And we're talking about mainly phones, but I'm sure also we could say iPads and computers and things of that nature. But just for the three of you, the question, how do you currently use media devices? And you guys can just kind of volunteer and answer as you would like.
Don't be shy. It's okay.
All right.
Go ahead, Cole.
We're going to have Cole start. There you go.
Yes. So I'd say media devices have become like such an integral part of the way we communicate with each other as teenagers and kids, but also it's integral to the way we gain information, the way we learn about the world. You think about 100 years ago, someone would have had to go spend hours at the library to find out what something was that they were interested in. Now, a kid can just Google it and they'll know it in seconds. And that's offered us a lot of opportunities to gain more and more knowledge as technology has progressed. But it also, it creates, I'd say, a dependency on those devices in some ways. I think electronic devices and how we use it socially, it can offer like an emotional appeal and almost become something that we're dependent on in communicating with each other. And sometimes as kids, we might feel we're more comfortable just texting someone than talking to them directly. And that can sort of deter, person-to-person interactions. And maybe that, I feel like it might have caused, that kids our age are sort of lacking in that interpersonal skills sometimes because they're so used to just texting someone, which is something that's completely unheard of before the last 20 years.
You bring up a really important point, Cole, that I just want to comment on. And it's something that I've observed is that I think we're losing something in what you call face-to-face, in-person contact with one another. Kind of living in what one young man who I was a client years ago said to me, he's tired of living in a two-dimensional world. but devices, electronic devices, through the computer and through his phone, and it made him very sad. And so, he said he felt like he was missing something, and that's what I'm hearing you say also. What do you think about that, girls?
I think kind of talking about like what Cole was talking about, they are really, really dependent on like, I mean, you wake up from your phone and like you do all these things, like you schedule things with your phone, you do everything, like you call people, you talk to people, like it's becoming like our main source of information. And like, I mean, like our lives revolve around them. So, they're really like, freeze this. They're, I don't know, they're overwhelming, I think.
Yeah. Good. Gabby.
What I was thinking as I heard something that both you and Cole said, Isabel, is, I remember when I did my undergraduate work, and you said this, Cole, you get a lot of your information, and it's easy, and that's a blessing on one side. When I did my undergraduate work, I had to go to a library and look things up, and there was nothing like this that developed. Now I'm aging myself, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was doing my doctoral work, I sat in a cabana most of the time writing my dissertation, because I could, as long as I had internet and I had my computer there, I could do all the research I needed to do right there. And even a lot of my books that, I was using for my dissertation were in my computer, that I could just access them very easily. So yeah, that is what we have come to rely on these days. How about you, Gabby? What do you think about all this?
So I do understand like kind of what Cole's saying, like how we use them for a lot of our information, all of that, but I also see him like so my family right now, we're using them for school. We're using all of the laptops for online school, so we don't have to be in person with everything going around, but then we also use them for information purposes and communication purposes while COVID is happening.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't really, I don't know. I see them also like there's good purposes like looking up things and communication and everything, but then there's bad purposes like they take away from family time and take away from all that kind of stuff also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we see a lot of is the negative side, the downside. I think we can agree on the positive things that media devices and the internet have brought into our lives. But what are these negative things? How can these media devices affect our happiness or lack thereof? What have you seen in your culture with your friends? What are the I would say significantly negative things that can happen when people misuse or overuse these devices? What have you guys seen?
I think like I mean, you go and you hang out with your friends, or you're at like a social event or something, and you look around the room and everybody's just staring at their screen, not even like interacting with each other. There's no purpose of being with someone if you're not going to be like engaging in the conversation and stuff like that. So I think emotionally, like for the people that it's taking away from, like you're not getting that face-to-face like contact and time with people when you're using electronics, So I think it's very, I don't know. I don't think they're very good to be having in like public areas and stuff like that, because it takes away from the moment,
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cole.
I think as far as the negative implications of technology, I'd say that values and personal value and self-value, those things can be like heavily impacted by social media, specifically for people our age.
In what ways, Cole?
I would say we and this is probably something that has been happening forever, but I think it's so much more obvious now with technology that how people our age value themselves so much based upon other people's opinions of them and what other people think. And they're made aware of standards through social media and TV, all those things.
Mhm.
And I think all public opinion, or not just public, but other people's opinion of you has always been something that people have struggled with. But now it's so easy to expose yourself to that. And it's something that if you're on your phone for any significant amount of time during the day, you're going to be exposed to that. And for people our age, it can be very, very intimidating and powerful because we care about other people's opinions. But I feel like at a point in our lives when we're trying to develop an identity as Christians, developing in Christ, or people who aren't Christian, no matter who you are, this is a very, very pivotal point in every person's life growing up. And so much can be influenced by technology, whether that's your friends through social media or the internet's general expectations and just social norms, all those things. But yeah, for sure. I think personal self-worth is the thing that technology can affect the most, I think. And kids will, if you post something on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you look at how many likes you're getting, and if the likes go up, you feel good. And I think like there's a chemical brain basis for how these things affect every single person. And people of all ages struggle with this, but obviously kids are at a point where they're not just fragile, but they're developing, and they can be affected at such a higher level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you have to say about that, Gabby?
I definitely say like I said before, communication is also a thing. Like if you can't interact with like your friends, your people that you're not able to see right now, like stuff like that, it's kind of harder to be able to talk to them like face to face, especially at a time like this. But having communication, like to be able to communicate, like my oldest sister Madison, it's easier for me to communicate with her while she's not here, or say something's going on and I need to like use technology or devices. It makes it easier to have a way to communicate.
Good. What about like going forward, the advice we could give other young people or parents? What are some things we should be aware of? Some people that'll watch this podcast, and just from your perspective, what kind of advice would you give? Isabel, what do you think? Like, what could we say to your peers? What could we say to parents and others, maybe teachers?
I mean, like, I know for myself, I definitely missed out on like a lot of moments with like friends and like opportunities and stuff like that, just because I'd rather like be home, watch TV, do something like that, So I think like setting time limits or something like that, I mean, it's not what we kids want to hear or what we want, but I think it's definitely beneficial to not just have it, like, I mean, you could have it all the time, but like to not expect or be expected to be on it all the time, like set time aside for your family or time for your friends, like physically, not just FaceTiming or doing whatever you got to do, Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with
Good.
that.
Go ahead, Gabby.
I kind of agree with what she was saying, setting limits and boundaries for certain, like, you don't want to be on the phone all day, missing out from time that you could have spent with family or friends or something. Say your parents aren't home all day, and when they do get home and you're just on your phones or something, it's kind of missing out from that time that you would be able to spend with them and like have with family. So definitely setting limits and having boundaries when it comes to that kind of stuff, like personal boundaries too.
Oh, excellent. I'm so gratified to hear you say that.
Yeah.
We forget sometimes how much wisdom even young teenagers have. And not that I know that you don't necessarily like to be called young, but you are young, younger than Dr. Cozart and I. But really showing us a lot of wisdom. And I just really appreciate that about you. So thank you.
Mhm. Good. So I think we could agree on the importance of being mindful of how much time we spend on the devices and self-limiting, or at least being open to talking over the limits with our parents, our guardians. Um, what about the dangers of the internet and all the content that's available to so many people, whatever their age is? I just want to throw out this idea. I'd like to know what you three think. What do you think about your parents checking your phones and kind of monitoring your phones and your devices? Is that like a big no-no to you guys, or what do you think of that?
So in our family, maybe not as much now, but like definitely when we were younger and didn't understand as much and weren't as kind of knowledgeable, like yeah, kind of aware of that.
Sure.
Like say someone online could say that they're this old. Maybe they're not that old. Like a real reason like why I use my phone is really communication with my friends and family, kind of entertainment when I get bored or something because we are home. But there's also a lot of like bad things that are on the internet, and a lot of because people aren't all honest. So there's a lot of bad things out there and a lot of things that younger kids may not be aware of. Like still now, definitely parents should check their phone, like check their kids' phones, set boundaries, make sure that they know what their kids are doing on their phones, and also being like having that trust with your parents, like to be able to tell them, hey, I don't think this is right. Like, could you help me with this? Explain this to me, like that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, I really admire you saying that, Gabby. Well, Cole and Isabel, what do you think about parental monitoring? I mean, you guys are older than Gabby, obviously. I think at some point we've got to kind of, watch out for ourselves. But what do you think of that concept in general?
I definitely agree with that. At such a young age, kids can be exposed to so much on the internet, and sometimes parents don't have enough of a grasp of what dangers kids may be facing on the internet, whether it's legitimate physical danger from predators or anything of that sort, or fraud, potentially risking their family as a whole. I definitely think that kids need not only to be, I'd say, monitored, but parents, and whether that's both school or at church even, or for me in Scouts, it's something we've done every single year. We go through courses about digital citizenship, not only what we are expected to do to how we treat others. We talk about online bullying, but also being responsible with where we're going on the internet, who we're speaking to, and what information we give, and all those things. I think beyond just monitoring what kids do, of course, at a certain age, at a young age, kids cannot be trusted with so much, so much freedom. It's the equivalent of letting kids, just leave the house. They're just gonna go, like a 6-year-old. They'll go out. They'll go out on the town for the day, and we'll see them this evening. Imagining that's almost an equivalent of what we're putting kids into the risk of at certain ages. But we can trust that as kids get older, going into high school, they develop more responsibility and maturity, and that can enable them to build more trust with their parents. And I think that's important. It's just like leaving the house is in some ways getting on the internet, because the internet is such it's a dangerous place, but also a place of great opportunity. And I think about, imagining if COVID was 50 years ago, how school would work. Would school happen? Would be gone. We probably would not be able to do school for a very long time. How so many things would not be able to happen. So, of course, technology has enabled us to thrive in a situation we otherwise would have completely collapsed in some ways. But yeah, there definitely are certain boundaries that parents should set and teach their kids about the dangers.
Yeah.
Good.
Excellent
Any-
point. Wow.
Anything to add, Isabel, on that?
kind of bouncing off what both of them said, I think giving younger kids the opportunity to put themselves in such like a vulnerable place, you know, like these younger kids don't understand what these people are doing. I mean, people our age and older, we hide behind the screens, you know, we don't have to tell the full truth or say what we mean or anything like that. You know, it's really easy to get away with stuff online. So having kids being in such like a vulnerable place, it's not good for them at such a young age, especially.
Good.
Good.
I'm so gratified to hear you all talk about, you know, and research, and I know Dr. Kozart would back this up, but research indicates that, you know, well, when we're young, like the three of you, you know, we don't like rules. Nobody likes rules. And yet research indicates that children feel more safe and secure around the boundary of rules that parents set for them. And it's really gratifying to me to kind of hear you sort of validate that in what you're saying. I don't know if that's just that you're really good kids, or if that is kind of a universal thought with some of your friends, that you hear some of those same things from your friends. So very good.
Good. All right. Well, we've heard from these young people. It's been a delight to hear their comments. I would just like to add, as we begin to wrap things up, that a lot of times media devices, and I'll just call it screen time, the younger kids are, the less time they should be exposed to screen time, whether it's TV, computers, iPads, phone, because the brain is still developing. I mean, even these young people that we have with us today, their brains are still developing. The brain develops until we're about 25 years old. And so we got to be careful with what we're feeding our brains. And especially very young people, very young, these kids in our homes, we should not just allow them to watch or have screen time for endless hours of the day. It will stifle their development. It'll stifle their creativity. It'll also stifle their ability to deal with reality versus watching stories unfold on a screen. So I would suggest that to be very careful, to limit that, because we want our children to develop in a healthy and wholesome way. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, Rich. You know, I couldn't agree more with some of the things that these young people have shared. And thank you all for your insight and your perspectives. And what you said, Rich, you know, absolutely true. And so what I want to say to the viewing audience, if you have questions or concerns about your children's use or your teenagers' use of media, don't hesitate to contact us. I believe we can help you, and I hope that this particular conversation today has been helpful to you, to kind of hear from different perspectives. You know, it's all good, and we trust that you're going to do the right thing. But if there's any opportunity for any of you, people here on this podcast and people viewing this podcast, please call us, contact us. Our contact information is on this screen, so we'd be more than happy to help you and anxious to hear from you. So God bless you, and thank you so much for viewing. Bye for now.